The Merida Cathedral. The founding of the city of Merida in 1542 atop the remains of the ancient Maya metropolis of Tijo marked a watershed moment in the urban planning and viceregal architecture of the Yucatan Peninsula. At the epicenter of this geometric and political layout stands the Cathedral de San Ildefonso, an architectural stronghold of immense historical and technical significance for the American continent.
According to the National Institute of Anthropology and History in 1982, this scheme distributed the era's governing powers around the main public space. The religious power, the cathedral and the episcopal palace, the civil power, town hall or ayuntamiento, and the military or residential power of the conquistadors. In this case, Montejo's house, or in Spanish, la casa de los Montejos or la casa de Montejo. However, this geometric grid was not merely an aesthetic choice, but a mechanism for demographic control and socio-political segregation. The central plaza and the first two surrounding blocks made up the traza. The tres, an area strictly reserved for the Spanish population, Spaniards who conquered the peninsula, encomenderos, and colonial officials. Beyond this immediate perimeter, the space was organized into barrios de indios or indigenous neighborhoods, such as Santiago, Santa Lucia, and San Cristobal. While the peninsular elite inhabited stone manors in the urban core, the Maya population encased received in thatched roof, wattle-endowed homes on the outer fringe, establishing a stark social division of space that persists for centuries in our lives. So, this is why the Merida city is known as the White City, or in Spanish, Mérida, la Ciudad Blanca. Because in other times, the downtown or many parts of the city are built by Spaniard people.
The layout of Merida strictly followed the ordinances of the Spanish crown, which were later formally codified in the laws of the Indies. The urban design was organized using an orthogonal grid, colloquially known as the chessboard layout, with the Plaza Mayor, now Plaza Grande, serving as its undeniable core. The Cathedral of San Ildefonso was intentionally located facing the city's main square, emphasizing its importance within colonial society. Its strategic position also made it one of the first landmarks seen by visitors entering in the city, reinforcing both its religious and symbolic value. Another remarkable aspect is that much of the cathedral was built using limestone taken from the ancient Maya city of Tijo. Reusing these materials allowed the Spanish to speed up construction while taking advantage of the durable local stone. Today, this connection between Maya and Spanish architecture makes the cathedral a unique example of the cultural transformation that occurred during the colonial period. In addition, the cathedral's thick walls, simple facade, and a solid structure reflect a Renaissance style adapted to local conditions. Unlike many European cathedrals with elaborate decoration, the Cathedral of Merida was designed to withstand the religion's climate and potential conflicts, giving it a more austere but monumental appearance.
The Cathedral of San Ildefonso was built between 1561 and 1598, under the direction of architects Pedro de Olestia, Juan Miguel de Agüero, and Gregorio de la Torre. The Mérida Cathedral holds the title of being the first cathedral completed on the mainland of the Americas, and the second oldest across the entire continent. Its architectural identity stands out due to several stylistic characteristics and cutting-edge 16th century engineering solutions, such as material syncretism. The cathedral was constructed using limestone blocks extracted directly from the demolished pre-Hispanic temples of Dome. To this day, Maya reliefs and iconographic fragments remain visible embedded within the interior walls of the present Renaissance and Mannerist facade. The main portal, flanked by twin towers reaching a height of 43.5 meters, showcases a sobriety typical of the Herrerian or late Renaissance style. It features a grand semicircular arch, the Puerta del Perdón or Door of Forgiveness, framed by Tuscan order columns, coffer vaults, and transitional interior. The interior space consists of three naves divided by cylindrical columns. The central nave is covered by a barrel vault decorated with coffer panels, sunken squares, which reduce the total structural weight without sacrificing strength. Meanwhile, the side naves showcase intricate weaving of gothic and Modejar heritage. Stone engineering against the climate. Due to the regional scarcity of large-scale structural timber suitable for traditional tie-beam roofs, the builders opted for purely masonry solutions. They utilize pendentive bolts, which are spherical domes intersected by vertical planes, to distribute weight down into the robust pillars. The horizontal truss is contained by massive exterior buttresses, a Gothic trait that guaranteed the building's stability against centuries of hurricane impacts. And lastly, but not least important, defensive architecture. The temple features loopholes, aspilleras or narrow wall openings, a military design element intended to defend the city center in the event of indigenous rebellions or pirate attacks.
However, the importance of San Ildefonso Cathedral is not limited to its architecture. For more than 4 centuries, this building has witnessed important historical events, inspired traditions, and given rise to many stories that are now part of Merida's identity. Some of these stories are supported by historical documents, while others have been passed down from generation to generation through oral tradition. This is a proof that the cathedral is important not only because of its design and age, but also because of its cultural and historical value. For example, one interesting story is not a legend, but an unsolved historical mystery. Some historians believe that Francisco de Montejo el Mozo, one of the founders of Mérida, may be buried beneath the cathedral. These ideas come from old documents that mention underground crypts, and because it is known that his wife was buried there. However, no archaeological investigations have confirmed whether his remains are really under the cathedral. One of the lesser-known events happened in 1950 during the Mexican Revolution in Yucatan. During that time, the cathedral was looted and lost many of its altarpieces, sculptures, paintings, and religious objects. For this reason, the inside of the cathedral looks much simpler today than many other colonial cathedrals in Mexico. Many of its original artistic treasures were lost forever. Another history that has been passed down through generations is about the so-called sacred message of the Mayan builders. According to popular tradition, some of the Mayan workers who helped to build the cathedral secretly carved hidden symbols into the stones to preserve part of the culture and identity. However, to this day, there is no historical or archaeological evidence to prove that this story is true. Even so, it remains one of the most popular traditions surrounding San Ildefonso Cathedral and continues to spark the curiosity of many visitors. Finally, for many years, people in Mérida have shared a popular story. It says that the cathedral is so large because the builder accidentally received the architectural plans intended for a cathedral in South America, probably in Peru. Although this story is still told by some tour guides and has become part of the local folklore, historians have found no evidence to prove that it really happens. Even so, it remains one of the most interesting stories connected to this historic building.
Evolution of the surroundings. from the Bourbon reforms to the 20th century. The surroundings of the cathedral and the Plaza Mayor have undergone profound transformations driven by the political and intellectual currents of each era. Enlightenment urban cleanup in the 18th century. In the late 18th century, the arrival of urban reforms introduced a new philosophy of urban management inspired by the Enlightenment. The cathedral surroundings, which until then had functioned as a chaotic open-air market and an avenue for bullfights, began to be regulated under a criteria of a good governance and public order. Enlightenment governors ordered the paving of nearly streets, installed the field's public streetlights, and banned informal commerce around the temple to improve air circulation and public hygiene, transforming the square into a landscape civic promenade.
During the Mexican Revolutionary period, the urban landscape surrounding the Cathedral of San Ildefonso experienced one of the most significant transformations in its history. Under the administration of General Salvador Alvarado, governor of Yucatan between 1915 and 1918, a series of political, social, and urban reforms sought to modernize the city while reducing the institutional influence traditionally exercised by the Catholic Church. These reforms reflected the revolutionary ideals of circulation and the separation of religion and civil authority, which directly affected several colonial buildings in Merida's historic center. Within this context, the architectural complex of the cathedral underwent its most radical physical modification since its construction in the 16th century. For more than 3 centuries, the cathedral had remained directly connected to the episcopal palace through the capels of San Jose and Rosario, forming a continuous architectural ensemble that represents the close relationship between ecclesiastical and political power established during the colonial period. This arrangement had remained virtually unchanged despite the city's gradual urban development through the 19th century. As part of Alvarado urban reforms, both chapels were demolished in order to physically separate the cathedral from the former episcopal palace. Beyond altering the appearance of the complex, this intervention symbolized the new political vision provided by the revolutionary government, in which public institutions and religious authorities were expected to function independently. Consequently, one of the most representative examples of colonial urban planning in Merida was permanently reconfigured. The demolition created an open space along the cathedral's northern facade, allowing for the construction of the Pasaje de la Revolución, a covered pedestrian corridor that connected the Plaza Grande with the surrounding streets. Rather than serving only as a circulation route, the passage introduced a new urban function by improving pedestrian mobility within the historic center while preserving visual access to the cathedral's monumental architecture. This intervention modified the circulation patterns around the building and established a more open relationship between the cathedral, the former episcopal palace, and the adjacent public space. Over time, the former episcopal palace acquired a new cultural function and today houses the Fernando Garcia Ponce, one of the most important institutions dedicated to the modern and contemporary art in southwestern Mexico. The coexistence of a 16th century cathedral with a contemporary art museum illustrates the continuous evolution of Merida's historic center, where colonial architecture has adapted to political, cultural, and social transformation experienced by the city over the centuries. Although the demolition of San Jose and Rosario capels permanently altered the original colonial composition of the cathedral complex, The creation of the Pasaje de la Revolución became one of the most influential urban interventions of 20th century. Today, the corridor remains an essential pedestrian artery within Merida's historic center, reflecting how revolutionary reforms reshaped not only the city's political institution but also its architectural and urban identity.